The years, Pokemon has become more and more wacky over like nonstop amount of money being made from the game. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm specifically talking about Pokemon cards, not the Pokemon games or the just the other Pokemon stuff that's out there, not the merchandise, the games, or anything like that. Specifically the cards. I know the cards technically is a game, but it's more of a collector's item these days. So over the years, obviously, people have hyped up the cards to a absurd amount, to the point where cards have become more and more pricey than a single house these days. And this is no different in today's day and age. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about how basically it's getting so bad that people are fighting over these cards. I mean, I don't mean like, oh, give me that card or else. I don't mean like that. I mean full on Superman punching over shells, kicking children out of the way to get to these cards. And we've seen multiple videos of it now where we will watch someone do a dolphin dive onto a set of cards so that way they can resell them. Or someone pulling someone's hair because they got in line 1 millisecond before them after they waited 24 hours to get into a singular line for Pokemon cards. And I know all this sounds wacky, but it's true. It 100% is true that these are like real things happening on a day-to-day basis. And I wish I could say it's just America. I wish this was one of those things where I could be like, yeah, it's just Americans being wacky and a little bit too weird, I guess you could say. But it's not. It's all around the world where anywhere where a Pokemon card essentially holds any sort of value where you can buy the packs is where this stuff is happening, where people are fighting over it, they're throwing tantrums over it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if people are getting their houses broken into because of it. And not only has this happened, right, where there's fights over it, but in Japan itself, where they print the essentially the OG cards, they have obviously they go through and they print the cards in sets, right? So if they're printing like when we had the fat rainbow Pikachu, they would print however many of those at one time, and then they would basically put them all in a box, and then they would separate them individually into individual packs. And a guy that was working there stole so many of rare cards. I believe it said he had $200,000 worth of Pokemon cards in a singular binder. And keep in mind, this guy only got caught because he, for some reason, took all of them to a singular card shop. Like that's how crazy these people are, right? Like they're not going and like there's no intelligence behind fighting someone over a card or stealing it from a company where you're probably going to be arrested for the rest of your life, if not a good amount of your life, in exchange if you get caught, right? So I mean, just to go back to that guy, imagine going to a card shop and you open up your binder and you have 6 rows of the rarest card in the entire set of cards. That's what this guy was doing. And it gets to a point where you're like, man, these people are something else. And now today we have another wacky thing, but I also think it's a little bit cool because I am a fan of collecting Pokemon cards. So today we have the highest selling Pokemon card ever for $4 million on eBay. This is the OG Illustrator Pikachu card in Japanese. It is in mint condition in PSA 9. Now, I will say if they took this out of the case, they would probably instantly grade it less because their gradings are a little wacky, and it's way more advanced these days. So, like, if you said this to somewhere else, they might rate it a 7 or something like that. But as long as it's holding this $4 million price tag with the PSA 9, it's going to stay that way forever unless, some YouTuber buys it and then decides to crack it open for whatever reason. We've seen that a couple times too. So, The rarest Pokemon card of all time, the Pikachu Illustrator has sold for $4 million in an eBay auction. The PSA Diamond card was listed by longtime collector. I don't know who that is. SM Pratty, SM Pratty, Spratty. Maybe that's how you said it. I have no clue. And closed at the flat 4 million on September 12th, making it one of the most expensive sales in the hobby's history. The Illustrated Pikachu was first awarded in 1998 to the winners of the Koro Koro comic illustration contest in Japan, with only a estimated 20 to 39 copies ever handed out. Considered the holy grail of Pokemon cards, it has become uh, synonymous with extreme rarity and value. I think that's how you say it, synonymous. Synonyms. I don't know, man. I can barely speak English. I might be here, from America, but I can barely speak it. Like I don't know. Like I feel like sometimes it just goes over my head. But yeah, so one of the rarest cards ever created is PSA 9. I think it's a pretty cool thing to see like rare collector items like this. I think this is kind of like it's like seeing like Abraham Lincoln's hat, kind of. Like if you're a history buff, I think that's the best representation I could give. It would be like seeing a actual version of Abraham Lincoln's hat, but in a Pokemon card. Now, I do think something that's funny about this is in Japanese. I've tried to sell a lot of Japanese cards because I have like first edition Japanese cards. You would be surprised how many places will not accept Japanese cards. Like I'm not even joking. You could bring this into like a card shop, right? And it could say PSA 9. It could have all this on it, and the card shop would be like, "Well, we gotta crack it open and scan it." And then because it's Japanese in America at least, most places wouldn't be able to scan it, so they would just be like, I guess we can't take it. And I just think that that's something kind of funny to think about. Like how many times has like maybe this card had something like that happen where they take it into a card shop, the guy doesn't know what it is, try to sell it, say, nope, can't take that, and they lose millions of dollars because they can't accept a Japanese card. I, I I don't know. The Pokemon card collecting community is always interesting because like there's so many random rules and stipulations behind every little thing that goes into it. And also, how are we determining if this is a PSA 10 or not, or like 9? Because like how I imagine PSA is obviously is card quality is the first thing to look at. Like, is the card clean? Is there any scuff marks? Any dirt, grime, anything like that? I feel like that's like first thing. But then after that, if only 20 to 30 of these were printed, and this is the first one that probably has ever sold that has actually been fully graded, then how do we know what a PSA 9 or 10 looks like for this card? Like, obviously they go into a little bit more detail with like the logo and like the offsets and the off cut and like all that stuff. But it's like, what if this branded card or whatever, what if all of them look the exact same, right? Like, what if you compare this one to a completely fresh one out of the package and they literally spec by spec look the exact same? Like, is that not a PSA 10 at that point? You know? I don't know. Kind of strange to think about just in the Pokemon world. That's actually why I don't get a lot of my cards graded because I don't really trust the grading system unless it's a very a lucrative card, I'll say. Like if you have a uh like let's say you have a first edition Charizard, right? Okay, that's a very like lucrative card. There was a lot of copies of it. I think it would be pretty easy to tell if it what its actual value is. But for a card like this that only had 20 to 30 copies, it's like, dude, you've probably never even seen this before, and you're saying it's a 9. Like, what's the comparison? Are you comparing this to like a normal card that has been printed millions of times? Because that doesn't make sense to me. But maybe that's just me. But yeah, that's really all I want to talk about today. Not a really long video, just the wackiness of Pokemon and how far it's really come. Wouldn't even thought a card would be selling for 4 million a couple of years ago. I remember Logan Paul a couple of years ago bought a Pokemon card for like 250K or something like that, like the OG Charizard. So, and I thought that was crazy. So seeing this for 4 million is absolutely like diabolical in my book. But been looking into a lot of Pokemon lore recently. Really, really cool. getting a little bit deeper into it, and can officially say my ace would definitely be Red Ninja. But hope you guys enjoyed. Have a wonderful day. Peace.